You're listening to The Practicing Law Librarian. This limited series is part of PLI's Ever Current podcast, where we bring you insights and updates from legal thought leaders. Find additional episodes at pli.edu or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Karen Osterly. Welcome to the Practicing Law Librarian podcast, presented by PLI's Legal Information Services Group. This podcast brings you conversations with and for the law librarian community. As a practicing law librarian myself, I've been working in legal information services for 34 years, currently with PLI's Library Relations Group. For this episode, I was delighted to have the chance to learn about the Louisiana court library system and its complexity from Miriam Childs. Her varied library work experiences prepared her perfectly for the work she does for Louisiana's highest court. With Miriam, we focused on patron needs, library response, and her work with local and national librarian associations. Hope you enjoy our conversation. Miriam, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
This is great.
You're
I was
welcome.
delighted that you were able to fit it into your schedule. And I have to admit that I don't know very much about the Louisiana system. Is the Supreme Court the highest court in the state?
It is. It is the highest court, and we've got 5 appellate courts below it and several judicial district courts, as well as family courts, mayor's courts, and some specialty courts like drug courts. And the Louisiana Supreme Court is the administrative body for all of that, in addition to the other work it does with the cases that get appealed. It's also the court of first resort for attorney discipline issues.
My God,
And for capital cases. It goes straight to the Supreme Court.
that is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot.
That is a great deal. The reason I ask, Supreme Court, I usually assume that's the highest court, but in New York, it is not. It's the lowest court. You probably know this. You're nodding.
I've heard that, and it confuses me every time.
It confuses all of us too, because people say, oh, it's a Supreme Court case. Oh, no, that's the lowest level, and then it goes to district, and then it goes to circuit. So it's very confusing, but that's why I checked. Okay, so
Yes.
you have, everything. It sounds
Yes.
like you have all these other courts under you, and also, like you said, attorney discipline and capital cases. That's quite a bit.
Yes, it is. And our justices are very busy, but there is a judicial administrator's office that assists the justices in the administrative duties that come with being the top of the judiciary. So the administrative office helps a lot with oversight of the lower courts. So it's not all on the justices and their staffs. There's a judicial administrator's office with various divisions within that who have areas of responsibility.
Okay, interesting. I was looking on AALL at your background,
Yes.
so I would know what to ask. And you got your bachelor's and then your MLS right after each other. So you knew what you wanted to do. You knew what you wanted to be
did.
early on?
Well, actually, I didn't. It was the early 90s, and I was a liberal arts major. I majored in history. And at that time, our academic advisors basically told us, well, you're probably not going to get a job. And so I said, well, then I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do. And I thought about working for government, like working for the federal government. But at that time, it was President Bill Clinton, and he was cutting back on government. So that didn't sound promising. So I grabbed my Louisiana State University catalog and I started going through it. I looked at anthropology as a master's. I looked at sociology as a master's. And I said, well, when I get a master's with that, then what do I do with that degree? I looked at the master's in social work, but it just sounded like a lot. It's like the process for getting into the School of Social Work was sort of daunting. And then there was some kind of clause that said, and if we don't think that you are the right kind of material, then, we're not going to let you graduate or something like that. So I said, what? So then I saw a master's in library science. I said, well, this sounds good because I really loved LSU Library. I really spent a lot of time there and enjoyed doing research for classes, but also just my own research. And I said, you know what? I think I'd enjoy working in the library. And I actually had been a student worker in the LSU library in my freshman and sophomore year. And I did enjoy that work. So I said, this is a master. When I'm done, I have a degree. I'll be a librarian. Like that's a job that I can pursue. So that really went into my decision making. Also, when I went to Coates Hall, which is where at that time, the library school, you actually went to class. Now it is completely online only. The Master's in Library Science is completely online. And so I went to the administrative offices. I spoke to the dean of the library school, and he was really excited for me to join and told me about scholarships. I was able to get a graduate school award, and it paid for all of library school. And I also was able to work as a graduate assistant in the serials department of LSU Library.
Wow.
So that again, seeing these opportunities open up, it just, things fell into place. So I said, well, I'm going to get this degree.
Right. Obviously, this is what you were meant to do because everything aligned for you. Well, that's terrific.
The main campus in Baton Rouge. I went undergraduate and graduate.
Okay, I've never spent much time in Baton Rouge, but I understand it's beautiful.
Yes.
New Orleans, I know better.
It is.
So then after that, it looks like you went to Exxon Chemical, and were you a librarian there?
I was. And right before that, I did a stint as a legal secretary at a small office in Baker, Louisiana, which is a little town north of Baton Rouge. And it's funny because also my junior and senior years at LSU, I was a student worker at the LSU Law School, not in the library, but in the administrative part of LSU Law School. And but I had been exposed to legal materials like the Louisiana Civil Code, the Louisiana statutes, the Louisiana Code of Civil Procedure. So I'd kind of been exposed to that, even
right.
Westlaw, when Westlaw had the blue screen. So when I first graduated, I didn't get, in December of 93, I didn't get a job right away as a librarian, but I had just I was about to get married, right. And well, I need to find a job. So I went ahead and got on with as a legal secretary. And it's just interesting that the exposure I had at LSU Law helped because I was familiar with some legal resources. So that was a good experience because it built on what I would later choose as my longest career. And I spent about 10 months doing that because I knew that I wasn't going to stay a legal secretary forever. When I saw that Exxon was looking for a librarian, I said, that sounds really interesting. So I applied and I was hired. Now at Exxon, since it's a corporate library,
right.
Considered, of course, one of the special libraries, along with medical and law. And I did abstracting and indexing. And my love in libraries is cataloging. I love cataloging, especially serials cataloging. I'm one of those unicorns, I guess. So the abstracting and indexing was right along with my interests. It was technical information about projects that would happen in the plant. And so they had binders and binders of technical documentation for the various upgrades, or maybe they'd get a new piece of equipment or we're changing something. And so they were always not in the physical plant. And when they were done with the project, they'd bring the binders to the library for us to use to go in. We used InMagic. It was InMagic DB TextWorks. I think now that's Lucidia, I think. And so you were just going to do like a little paragraph of what the project was about. And, the title of the project and a paragraph of what it was about. So that when someone...
abstract.
Right, exactly. And then the next part of that was microfilming. So I would have to remove the documents from the binders and put them in order in this boxes and send them off to be microfilmed. When they came back from being microfilmed, I would then add the microfilm reel information to the record so that an engineer who wanted to go back and look at the project would know which microform reel. There was also some offsite storage, but I wasn't involved in that so much. But if it was offsite, I think there was another department that would retrieve those. So yeah, I wasn't the head librarian, handled all of the database searching. At that time, they were using, what was it? Was it the dialogue to search all of the chemical abstracts and all of that scientific information. The head librarian did that, and she managed the budget, and she made decisions about what information products to buy. But our room contained not only the project files, but also equipment files that tracked the maintenance that was done on equipment like things called pressure vessels, shell and tube. And I worked in the fixed equipment section. So fixed equipment has no moving parts. There was a different section for things like pumps that had moving parts. So all of our equipment files were for fixed equipment. And so you get the engineers and operators coming in who'd need to pull a file on a particular piece of equipment. And we'd actually check it out on a little ledger. And so, yeah, and we had a few books, a few magazines. We had a couple of student workers. So, yeah, people would come to the library for help with research and also looking up equipment files.
It sounds fascinating. It sounds really interesting. And there's not too many of us around anymore that actually worked with the microfilm reels. I did that at New York Law Institute. We had New York cases, historical, and New York Times, and various technical offerings on reels. So that was fun. And then from there, you went to public libraries.
So that transition happened because in the meantime, while I was at Exxon, my husband went to law school at LSU. My husband is originally from Metairie, Louisiana, which is a suburb right outside of New Orleans. And he wasn't a big fan of Baton Rouge. He's even though that's where we met while I was in library school, because he was working as a full-time library associate in the serials department.
Wow.
Where I was doing my graduate assistantship. And that's how we met. And yes. So he decided, he had taken the LSAT in 1991 and did really well. So he was thinking about, what do I need? What should I do? So he said, well, just go ahead and go to law school. So he graduated from LSU Law School in July of 1998, but he didn't want to stay in Baton Rouge. He did not. So we decided we would move back, or he would move back, and I would follow him, of course, to the New Orleans area, right, which meant I needed to resign from Exxon and find another job on the other side. So Jefferson Parish Library System was looking for librarians, as they often do have openings. And again, I applied, and they hired me as a reference librarian at the West Bank Regional Branch. And all that means it's on the other side of the river. There's the East Bank and West Bank of the Mississippi River. The West Bank Regional, the big library on the West Bank of the river. So I was a reference librarian there. And it was general reference, just helping people with the computers, helping people find materials in the library. And so it was different because I was kind of doing technical services work, and I was a little nervous about being on the desk and people coming to ask me. But I got used to it. I got used to that.
I bet you did fine.
Yeah, I did. It was, yes, because you got to see the same people come in. And I didn't do too much circulation, really. It was really focused on reference and no tech services.
That handling reference questions at the public library was pretty easy after you got used to it. Good.
Yes, it was. I was intimidated at first, but I made a really good friend there, and we're still friends. Nice. So it was a good experience, because every job you get, you learn something. So again, at Exxon, at the law office, I learned a lot. At Exxon, I learned a lot. I learned a lot at Jefferson Parish as well, about how parish libraries work. And so.
And then you went to UNO?
Yes, I went to UNO. So my passion for wanting to be a serials librarian came back, and UNO was looking for a serials librarian. So I took that opportunity to pursue that. And I worked there for about 3.5 years. Now, once I got to UNO, I think I had different expectations. And I think that the expectations and the reality kind of clashed. And it wasn't the experience that I hoped it would be. It's like I did get to work in serials. I did get to work on serials, and I did do some cataloging. But at a certain point, it shifted more to management. And though I am, the director, at that time, management for me I just wasn't
not appealing. Not interested.
I really wanted to go into the stacks, and I wanted to do all the holdings for all of the titles that were missing holdings. I wanted to go in and record, what was on the shelf and the missing issues, and then go into the records and edit them and deal with title changes that hadn't been handled, hadn't been cataloged. I really wanted to do that. But instead, there was just a lot of meetings and, like I said, more management. And I didn't quite get to the point where I just figured out where I fit. So, but it's just one of those things where you're growing as a professional and you're just wondering, well, what's next? Because I'm not sure if I wish to continue here.
But you learned that you were not crazy about administration, or a big part of your job being
yes, at that time I did learn that. And it was a valuable lesson. But also I learned how academic libraries work and the issues with academic libraries and some of the problems that academic libraries have when dealing with the main administration of a university. There was always a fight for money. There was always the library being cut, and that was eye-opening to see that dynamic.
Right. I mean, I think as we go along, and I try to tell my son this, whatever job you take, you learn what you like and don't like. So it helps guide your path.
Yes.
And so, you were at a corporate library, and then you were at the public library, and then you were at an academic library, and then you made this big jump to law libraries.
Law libraries, yes. So in 2003, I saw this ad show up on a listserv that I was on that was looking for a serials librarian at a place called the Law Library of Louisiana. And I said, hey, I'm going to try for that. I was under the mistaken impression that all law librarians had to have a JD and an MLIS. And obviously that's not the case. Because I'm here and I've been here since 2003.
Right.
I have since come to discover that with courts and law firms, it's a different environment than with academic law libraries, where to be competitive, you really do need to have that JD and MLIS. And that's not the case with courts. It helps, of course, but it's not an absolute requirement, or you just won't be looked at. Right. And this was a serials librarian job that had to do with managing the check-in receipts and more technical services work, just anything with missing issues and claims. And I helped with cataloging, because when I started, there were some senior librarians here who I worked under. So I was working under the head of technical services, and I helped her with copy cataloging. And she passed all of the serials work to me because she wasn't crazy about that. And I said, sure, give me. And so I got to know the collection really well. Because I handled all of the serial records. And there were, at that time, we had a lot of documents, government documents coming in. Not so much now, because a lot of government information is now online.
Right.
And then we were getting microfiche still. We were getting lots of print. And sometimes when the person who handled check-in was out, I would do the backfill. So I got to learn very well how the check-in system worked, because we were using we still use a system called EOS. And I got to know EOS like the back of my hand, because I knew cataloging, I knew serials. We were doing acquisition, so we dropped that because the court went to an ERP system that it would have meant double work. So we discontinued acquisitions, but I just threw myself in and enjoyed working with the new books that came in and dealing with problems in the stacks, dealing with issues with call numbers and sorting all of that out. And just learning about the collection development philosophies here There are some materials, such as Louisiana materials, that even though they're old, we still keep it. We still collect it. So every time we get a new, for example, every time we get a new statute volume for the Louisiana statutes, we don't throw out the old statute volume. We save it and we put it in our superseded stacks area.
Right.
So just learning those procedures and why we do it, because it is used. We get reference questions. Another part of this job that I didn't do right away was learning legal reference and how to provide legal information. I did struggle with it at first, but working with the librarians who are here, I learned everything I could from them about self-represented litigants and not giving legal information and legal advice, and how to know when you're about to give legal advice, when you're getting too involved with the question. Learning all of the resources that's in the library and also accessible online that could assist someone. That was the biggest learning curve for me, I'd say, because again, with the serials and tech services work, I'd been doing that, but it was the reference work where I think I've made like the biggest knowledge leap. Because I'm, compared to the way I was 21 years ago, I mean, now it's like I have no fear going on the desk and assisting people.
Plus, you have 20 plus years of institutional knowledge, and you know where things are, and you know where this reference is, and what's likely to be found where, those kinds of things. Because last year was your 20th anniversary there, right?
Last year was my 20th anniversary. It certainly was, which is surprising. But also, it's learning about the court and learning about the judiciary, learning about what the different departments do. Learning all of that took time, learning who does what, and sometimes why. Because having that context is important, because you never know what kinds of questions are going to come to our desk. We get calls from all sorts of people, calls and emails and people walking in. It's not just an attorney needing help with, it's all sorts of questions. And having that context has been critical in being able to assist people, and not just patrons, but also staff members who don't know where to go to find who's responsible for this, that, or the other. So that institutional knowledge, at this point, I'm the one who's been here the longest in the library. And people rely on my institutional knowledge for some things where they're like, I have no idea how to find out this information. I'll say, well, you need to contact this person in this department.
Right. Let me ask you this, because I don't know this by heart. You serve the bench and the bar and the public?
Yes, that is correct. Okay. That is correct. Yes.
And is there, in terms of volume, just simple volume, mostly public, mostly the bar?
It's mostly public.
Okay.
It's mostly public. Yes. We also have a prisoner. We assist incarcerated persons. We can, of course, no legal advice, but they're allowed to write letters to us. We get little envelopes that'll say legal mail.
Yeah, we did too.
Yes. And they'll ask, I need cases, I need statutes. They might ask a general question. They might say, I heard about this law that changed the good behavior law or something like that. So we have limits on what we can send. And we explain those limits to the incarcerated persons, and we send them what we can, and we don't charge for it either. We were charging for it, but then we decided to drop it so that we could increase the access.
Good. You probably know I was 7 years at NILE, New York Law Institute, and that was really our niche, was the superseded materials, the older materials. And I know I sent you a few things that I can't remember now what they were, but a few of the superseded volumes that we were discarding. But we would get letters from prisoners, and mostly they wanted briefs. And so if we had the briefs, we would print them and send them. But usually we didn't have what they wanted because we were very New York specific. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. Yes. So let me ask you about, because you've been there for 20 years, and as you said, it used to be a lot more print, used to be a lot more books, and now it's quite a bit online. I wanted to ask about sort of that change in that process. Like tech services, started in tech services, and now you do everything. What are you seeing with artificial intelligence and generated artificial intelligence in your work?
Well, the court when it comes to court work products, artificial intelligence is not being embraced. The court is extremely cautious, and they do not want the law clerks to rely on AI when drafting bench memoranda and any other documentation that has to do with the writs that come before the court. So as a court, we're not integrating artificial intelligence. There's too much at stake to if it were to be integrated, it would have to be very controlled with a lot of, not regulations, but a lot of guardrails. I'd say, like, the law clerk would absolutely have to check the information provided by the AI bot. It just could not take it and say, hey, here you go, judge. No, You would have to double check that. So for a court, moving very slowly, even though tools we use, such as Westlaw, has AI incorporated into it.
Right.
But it's not being promoted. I would say that. Good old-fashioned legal research is what the law clerks and other court attorneys are still doing. Now, when it comes to the public, that is very problematic because AI makes it, the answers AI just throws you, like ChatGPT just throws the answer like it's magic. And we know it's not. We know it's based on large language modules.
Right.
The public can be too easily misled by whatever ChatGPT or any other AI product says. And we're in the business of quality legal information. It is a problem because they'll think, oh, I've got the answer. Oh, I know what to do now. I'm done. I don't need anything.
Right. And
it's going to be harmful to the outcome of the issue that they're working on. Because we know where the forms that are accepted by the court system, we know how to get access to those. We know where those websites are. It's not, common knowledge. You have to kind of know where to go to find the forms that would be accepted by courts in Louisiana. And ChatGPT doesn't necessarily know that. And all of those nuances that go into handling your own case just it just gets lost. And, everyone wants a quick, easy answer. Right. And I just think that AI pushes in that direction too much. For attorneys, it's not good at all because, we heard about the attorney last year or the year before last who was sanctioned for not checking the citations, and the ChatGPT had done a hallucination. So hopefully attorneys have learned their lesson from that. But I just have a feeling that our newer attorneys who are going through law school now will be graduating in the next couple of years or so. They may not get that message and might think that ChatGPT is the way to do legal research. And it's not. You really, when you're dealing with complex legal issues, you've just got to do the legwork, and also only searching in Westlaw or only doing your research online is not enough. Sometimes you have to go to the books and treatises and secondary sources to really do your due diligence and really learn about the issue you're dealing with, especially if it's new to you. And it just seems like AI makes it so simple to learn about contract law. Oh, hey,
but
here's how it's not. It takes so much experience and context as well.
It's not that simple.
It is a tool, yes, but it must be used where it fits. And I think it's just being used in places it just doesn't really fit when it comes to law. Other disciplines, maybe not so much. Maybe medicine would be another one, would be very problematic and harmful. But in the legal discipline, there are just certain places where it works and certain places it doesn't.
Right. And that leads to a related question. And because you mentioned, they can't just search online. They can't just search, a database. You have to go. And it was wonderful that you said this. They have to go to the book sometimes. Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you what you've seen in that, because we used to be all print.
Yes,
everything used to be books.
Print. That's right.
And now there's quite a bit online. How is your system, your library, making that transition? because you've said there's a lot more online now, but you're managing it carefully, and obviously
Yes.
you're still keeping the books for people. Where are you guys on that spectrum, and how are you managing that process?
Well, what we do is, I'll take the LexisNexis digital library as an example.
Mhm.
When LexisNexis rolled out its digital library, and I was talking with the representative about what it is, what it does, how it works, and how it can be a benefit to the library, we realized that there were print resources that we didn't need to keep in print because they weren't used a lot. For example, federal materials. Being a state court, there's the demand for federal materials has, perhaps there was a lot years ago, but it's really dropped off. So we immediately identified these are materials that we can drop in print, and they will be available in the LexisNexis Digital Library, where someone needing to see the federal, like Moore's federal practice, go to the digital library. Now, it's not the same as the books, true, but for the amount of traffic we get for Moore's federal practice, having it online was plenty. When we considered the time it took to update the set, all of the sets that we'd canceled, the time it took, it didn't make sense to spend all of that time with loose leaf filing and processing compared to the use. So that logic has held for Westlaw materials as well. If it's materials that are not used heavily, at least we have access to it. We don't need to keep it in print because of the time it takes to upkeep it. That staff time could be used for other things. It doesn't make sense to spend all that time keeping up materials that just aren't used in print. So that's been our guideline, where if it's materials that we see don't get much use, and it's available in Westlaw, available in Lexis, then we'll go ahead and decide to cancel the print, but we'll still have it online. And also the LexisNexis Digital Library, they allow outside persons to use the digital library. And this was all
Really?
This is like yes, for us. And I think it's because we're a court and a public court library. An attorney can request a username and password and have access to all of those secondary sources through us. Yes. And so that was another thing to consider, that the LexisNexis Digital Library is increasing access to the legal materials so that someone who is in Shreveport, as we talked about earlier, could log in and use Moore's federal practice rather than having to drive down here and use it. Or anything that any of our subscriptions in the LexisNexis Digital Library, they were able to bundle it and make it price competitive so that it made sense for us to drop a lot of print and keep only certain things in print and have all of our LexisNexis treatises available in the digital library. Yeah.
Let me ask you how you use PLI resources, because we have PLI Plus, where all of our titles or the vast majority of our titles are available online.
Yes.
And of course, we still do the books.
Yes.
So how do you guys use PLI, and what do you have from us?
Yes. So with PLI, we have a number of PLI treatises, and that forms part of our rich American law treatise collection. And which we do, again, we didn't cancel all print. We still have a good core print, and that's based on, again, usage. So yes, our PLI materials do get used, and I'm trying to think, I think we might have even gotten a new one that had to do with information technology.
Yes.
Yeah. So when we see titles that come out that kind of address a gap, because I think at that time I said we have kind of a gap in the law that deals with information technology, and perhaps at the time there were a lot of cybersecurity problems. So right. I said we need more. So when I saw PLI had a title on information technology, I said let's add that. We need to add that to our collection. Okay. So yes, we do rely on publishers like PLI to fill out areas that we are lacking, because it is important, because we do have people who come in and we do have people who need to access the print. and we need to have something. We don't want to have just an empty room. So we want to make sure that, of course, we do have imbalances where we have too much in one area and not enough in another, but we're doing our best to make that more balanced. Exactly.
I mean, we're mostly post-pandemic. Have you seen the visitor population, the visitor frequency come back up?
Yes, the visitor frequency has come back up.
Oh, well, good.
And we've also gotten our call volume back up and emails. So yes, we are back to pre-pandemic levels, if not a little bit more, which is a good thing.
Really?
Yes.
That's terrific.
Yeah, because we're kind of a hidden gem. I guess if I could toot my own horn a little bit, we're really the only truly public law library in the state. Yes, we do have our 4 law schools. However, they're really focused on their faculty and their students. And yes, the public is allowed to go into LSU's law library or Southern's law library and use their materials, but that's not their mission. And also, it doesn't help someone who is in North Louisiana. So we do a lot of outreach to our public librarian counterparts, because in the absence of a public law library system, people will go into their local public library branch and ask for legal help. And public librarians are not trained in how to respond to legal questions. So we've done a great deal of outreach to our public librarian counterparts to train them on the basics of legal information, and to also make sure they know who we are, and to know that they can always send patrons to us and not turn them away, because that was the response. I can't help you. I can't give legal advice. So we were trying to say, well, these are some resources that you can direct the person to, but if you're not comfortable with that, send them to us. They can call us, they can send us an email, and we can forward materials. We can talk to them and help them find what they're looking for. So, and there's also materials that or resources that our state library has made available, such as Gale legal forms that people aren't aware of. And we can say, you can go use Gale legal forms at your local library. So it's not well known, and we're the ones who know where these legal information sources are. So we feel very strongly about the need to reach out across the whole state, because the access to justice gap in Louisiana is pretty bad.
Right, exactly. But it sounds like you're saying technology has enabled you and made it much easier and possible to get all this out to people.
It has. And in addition, we went ahead and purchased the LibGuide software that a lot of libraries around the nation have purchased, and all types of libraries. So for us, we've made LibGuides on various legal topics. We have one LibGuide specifically for self-represented litigants, so that if you were in, say, Lake Charles, and you went to our website, looked at the self-represented litigant LibGuide, it's chock full of information and referrals that you could just learn about without having to drive to our library. So having our LibGuides online is another way that we reach out, because we have so much information in our LibGuides. We have like a legal reference LibGuide. We have an online forms LibGuide. So we've done our best to get this information into a usable, user-friendly format, so that if you do stumble upon our website, you've got great information right there. So that's another way that we try to make information accessible and available.
And these are all available through your website?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so they don't actually have to be a patron or a member. They wouldn't be, would they?
Right, exactly. So if you find our forms LibGuide, then you can get access to those court forms, like I said, that are accepted by Louisiana courts. And, filling out a form, getting the form to the person, we know it's only part of the story. The other part is filling it out correctly and filing it correctly.
Right.
Unfortunately, that is something that we cannot tell people how to fill the form out or how to file it.
Right.
Making it available. And some of the forms have instructions. So the best we can do is make it available so that at least they get the form, look at it, and they've at least got the proper form.
Right. And
so it's not perfect. Right. It's not perfect, but it's better than them not having access at all.
Right. So. Well, it sounds like you've made remarkable strides, post-pandemic and through the pandemic by increasing your offerings just dramatically.
Yes, and another one of our outreaches is to Spanish speakers in the New Orleans metro area. That is a traditionally underserved population, but it's growing. So we now have some LibGuides in Spanish. It's a minority of our LibGuides, but we do have some of our basic LibGuides in Spanish. And we've got this immigration guide that's got all sorts of information, like how to find a relative that's in the ICE detention system, what numbers to call, what websites to visit. So again, collecting all of this information in one spot at least gets people in the right direction. And we have seen quite the increase in Spanish-speaking callers. Now, that, of course, has been aided because right now we have a Spanish speaker on staff. So we definitely are using his Spanish-speaking skills, but he works very closely with the head of public services. He doesn't answer the questions himself. He will consult with her and then translate. So we've really been able to increase that outreach, and that's gone very well. So
good.
Yes.
So all this technology that you're applying, yes, how has that affected your patrons' expectations, do you think?
Now, that is a really good question. I think that, I don't know. I think a lot of our patrons who come in aren't sure what to expect, and they're just happy to get the information. I haven't seen like a increase in, well, you're the library and you can do all of this. What people still seem to be very thankful that they receive the assistance and help. And I'm even talking about attorneys like from small law firms or solo practitioners who were looking for perhaps a certain article that they needed to see from a law review and had no idea how to get access to it. It just seems like people are more just amazed that we're able to find things. So I haven't seen so much the expectations. If anything, we push ourselves. It's like we expect a lot of ourselves. We're hard on ourselves. So yeah, I haven't seen that, but we keep the pressure on ourselves to do our level best at all time, whether it's a self-represented litigant or the Chief Justice.
And you've seen a lot of technology changes over the years. Is there, how do I phrase this? I made notes. Any past technology or innovations that shed light on the current situation? So AI, librarians are like, okay, yes, this is the answer. This is the answer. Just like word processors were the answer and computers were the answer and, ebooks were the answer. But before that, CD-ROMs were the answer. And a lot of librarians are saying, okay, this is what we do. We analyze and we figure out what our people need, what our patrons need, whoever they might be. And so I understand what you said about needing to be really careful about artificial intelligence in the courts. But I'm wondering about your thoughts on that.
Whenever the new platform comes out, there's a lot of hype around it. But it just seems like going to AALL and hearing our colleagues talk about the issues with the new platforms and the new features that come out, really we realize it's like, okay, that is available, but is it useful for our constituency? What's going to be helpful I guess we're kind of looking for like, what will really help our Louisiana judiciary? So yes, we've not had successes in everything, but that's okay, because then we learn and just become a little bit more picky when we hear about new things that come out. We immediately think, is this going to work for our internal clients? And what about the self-represented litigants we assist? Is this really going to help them?
Right. How has technology affected the work that you do? And it sounds like you've applied it wherever you could, wherever it made sense.
Yes, where it makes sense. That's the important part, where it makes sense. And also from a budget standpoint, where is it smart to spend the money? So that's the thing. If we had an unlimited budget, well, no one would have problems. But since our budget is limited, we have to see what makes sense what makes the most sense in spending our limited dollars. And we can't have the whole pie. We have to choose which pieces are the best bang for the buck.
Okay. But it sounds clearly like moving a lot of things from print to electronic availability has been a good move for you.
That has been a good move. That has definitely been a good move, because with the LexisNexis Digital Library, yes, the public can access it, but so can the court attorneys. The court attorneys can log in from their desks and read the treatises instead of having to come into the library and take the book out, and they can highlight passages, download them, and etc. So yes, that tools like that put really information into the hands, that those seem to work very well.
Okay. That's collection management. You're always seeing what you need, what work is getting busier, what work is getting slower, the questions that come up.
Yes, because we actually have something called Gimlet, where we record our reference questions. And in fact, our head of public services is constantly reviewing the Gimlet entries to see how staff responded to questions. And if there was like another resource that could have been given, our head of public services will ask us, could you call that person back and tell them about that? So that gives us, that's like the on the ground real time data that tells us what's being asked. What are people looking for?
Right. Exactly. We always did that too. I mean, the reference people, that's the first line of inquiry.
Yes. Yes. That is a big part of just knowing what's going on, is who's calling, or who's contacting us is another important thing to see. Where is this coming from? So, yeah, but we also have a lot of people who need access to historical Louisiana information, historical acts, historical statutes, historical code books for various research reasons. Sometimes it has to do with litigation, criminal law, opening cold cases. So we definitely know that our historical Louisiana collection, which is pretty massive, that's something that's extremely valuable. So, yeah,
right,
because that's used a lot.
Right. No, the archives. I mean, that's my love. And we're working on a big project, actually the archive project, where we're looking at all these older course handbooks and older versions of treatises and coding them to get them on Plus, to get them online, to be more available, more widely available. Well, let me ask you about your volunteer activities in addition to this incredibly busy library that you run, because I looked at this and you've been part of New Orleans Association of Law Librarians since the very beginning. Right. You were treasurer, and then you were vice president, and then you were president. And in the meanwhile, you were in local arrangements committee and the technical services special interests. You were vice chair and then chair. And what else? You've been, I had to, sort it out and highlight it so I could tell these things apart. No, you were board liaison for Connell and for Excellence in Community Engagement and Pipeline to the Profession and the Index to Foreign Legal Periodicals and and then you've been on juries, the Annual Meeting Grant Awards jury and the Excellence in Community Engagement jury. And you've been on the executive board since 2022, which puts you on the executive board finance and budget committee and all kinds of other things. I have no idea how you found the time to do all this.
I don't either.
Seriously. I mean, you've been really involved since you started with Law Library of Louisiana in 2003. You got involved right away with New Orleans Association of Law Librarians.
Yes.
So what motivates you? I mean, this is more than I've seen anybody else do.
Well, I would take it all the way back to 2003 when the director at the time was Carol Billings, who was a former president of AALL. And she encouraged me right away, and all the other librarians who were hired after me, to get involved, because she knew the value of being involved in professional organizations and how it would not just benefit me personally and with personal growth, but it would benefit the library. And she was absolutely right. I've been able to meet people. I have been able to push myself personally because like I said, if I were left to my own devices, I would just be, doing my little serials cataloging. And
Right.
so I was pushed out of that shell, having to take responsibility and ownership of things, like when I was treasurer of NOAL, and of course, and treasurer of AALL. You just take ownership of that area. There are responsibilities that go along with it. Like with NOAL, there was back then we had our big Christmas dinner. And so the NOAL treasurer brought the checkbook.
Right.
You were supposed to bring the checkbook because you would write the check to pay for the dinner.
For the dinner.
So it's just, that's me. I got to do that. That's me. And people are relying on you to do that.
Right.
So, and it just pushes you to see the big picture, to care about processes and procedures. Also with NOAL, I'd noticed a lot of things were just not written down. And so I said, I'm going to start a NOAL procedures manual.
Right. We need to have this.
It's just, I would get confused. Other people would get confused. I said, let me just get this procedure. So it's still in existence and it's been updated, but it hadn't been in existence until I took the initiative to do that, because I saw the need for being able to transfer that information to people who would serve with NOAL in later years.
Right. The institutional knowledge to codify it.
And the institutional knowledge. Yes, exactly. So the benefits to the library, well, I don't think that I would have even felt I could be director if I hadn't had experience chairing like TSSIS, taking on the leadership roles in NOAL, and serving on other committees. And I don't think I served on a whole lot of committees, but still just being as involved as I was, just in taking on that responsibility. So once the opportunity came for me to be promoted to director, it wasn't this foreign idea, like, what, me? I'm just the cataloger, because before then I had been associate director for the library and the head of technical services. So it just, all those experiences built upon one another. And I think for me, a lot of it was personal, because I'm an introvert. I know a lot of people say, well, I'm an introvert, but no, I am an introvert. And it really pushed me out of my shell, attending the conference, talking to people, introducing myself to people, and not feeling, getting over the awkwardness and just realizing that people aren't going to just look at you and say, who are you? They're going to say, hello, how are you? So all of those experiences just got me to the point where I felt I could take on leadership. And also, again, just the institutional knowledge that I had. I guess I just really knew how things, I'm talking about the law library in particular. I knew how things were supposed to work. I'd learned the collection very well. I'd seen all the changes, been part of the discussions of the changes. And I just said, well, I learned from the best. I learned from not only Carol Billings, I also learned from Georgia Chadwick and Kathy Lemon and Marie Erickson. And really, if I hadn't learned so much from them, that was another huge part of it as well. So yeah, it's like I said, it's all of them kind of work together, learning from my other experienced librarians, pushing myself to be more involved and getting out of my shell and taking ownership. And then just realizing that I'd learned so much about the law library and so much about the judiciary and so much about how it worked. And just realizing that was something that was valuable and could be put to good use.
Right. Right. That you would be the right person for director.
Right.
Because of all this background.
Right.
If you were talking to someone who was just becoming a law librarian, and you've said some of it already with talking about what brought you to this point, what advice would you give them?
Well, first, I would want them to never say never, because I never thought I would be the director of a library. I really didn't think I would. I would tell them that they need to always be open to learning new things, and that every day you're probably going to learn something new, and to not take that lightly, to really learn it and to care and to be involved. And also join AALL, make friends with colleagues around the nation, because you may not stay in the same place 20 years. I'm unusual. A lot of younger people these days, they do not stay in the same place. So if you're, just starting out, if you're never saying never and you're keeping all your options open, that means you need to get to know as many people as possible, because you might talk to the future person who hires you. You also want to know what you're interested in. Don't let that limit you, though. But you do want to take that into consideration, but just don't let it limit you. Like if I had said, I'm only interested in cataloging, just forget everything else, then I wouldn't be where I am now.
Right.
But if you're interested in cataloging, then be the best cataloger you can be. So I would just say that I would say you should, and also don't jump to conclusions and make assumptions. Keep your mind open, because the moment you start making conclusions and saying, well, those people are like that, or those libraries are like that, I'll never work in that's not a good way to approach, because the way information is changing, you could wind up anywhere. You could be working for a big law firm in New York. So you just never know.
You never know.
You
never know.
Yes, don't assume. And also don't assume that your career is going to take a certain path.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you made those decisions early on. I mean, you were in a corporate law library, in a corporate library for several years. And then you went to public library, which is not an experience that most law librarians have, but a lot of learnings from that. Yes. And then you went to academia, and you were there several years, and then you went to the courts. It's really quite a remarkable combination of experience.
And I would say it served me very well. It has served me very well. And I'll have to shout out to LSU, because they gave me one heck of an education as well. I definitely got a very good grounding there. And that really did shape how I approach my work and how I approach just planning my day, planning for the library. It really just gave me this good foundation. And my job at Exxon too, working with my boss there, Wendy McLean, she was extremely influential as well. She really showed me how to be a professional. She was my first boss, library boss, and she was very good at what she did.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk. I'm just glad that you thought enough of me to ask me, because of course I'm always thinking, no one wants to hear from me. I'm just over here in New Orleans and just doing my thing. So I really hope that anyone who hears this gets something out of it. And it's very humbling, actually. It is.
Oh, goodness. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Your background is everything you've done. All the experience has brought you to where you are. If you've used everything to get here.
Yeah, you don't have to be a superstar right out of the gate. I think there's also a lot of, with social media and influencers and all that, I have my own thoughts about that, but you don't have to be the superstar out of the gate. You can grow, you can have time to develop. You should be nice to yourself and and be kind to yourself and generous with yourself, and know that you're not going to have all the answers right at the beginning. You do have to grow and mature. And we talk about aging and how, people are like, oh, I don't want to get older, blah, blah, blah. But you do get a lot of maturity. And that is a good thing, because you learn more about yourself, and you are able to help people once you are certain of yourself. And, you're never going to be, 100% certain, but you just get to the point where you're able to reach back and say, hey, let me tell you a little bit about what happened with me.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for joining me. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
It's really been quite something. Miriam, I just want to say thank you once again, and I will look forward to seeing you in Chicago.
I will be there. I will be there.
And thank you for your service to Exxon and to the public libraries and to UNO and especially to the Supreme Court and to AALL.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the service. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Practicing Law Librarian, part of PLI's Ever Current podcast. Be sure to subscribe and listen to our latest episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. And to learn more about the Practicing Law Institute, please visit pli.edu. To learn more about PLI Plus, which provides electronic access to the full collection of PLI Press publications, and schedule a demo with a member of our team, please visit pli.edu/plus. Please note that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast represent those of the individuals being interviewed and not necessarily those of PLI.